Hello, everybody. This is Mac, and I'm here with
Collin
and Brock.
And this is episode 1 of our new series, Inside the Mind.
Woo!
So, just to give you a quick debriefing, this one's going to be on quick backgrounds. Our Inside the Minds are going to be little videos that show you how we do things. Not necessarily a tutorial per se, but just a take on our reasoning behind how or why we do the things we do when we film.
Process.
So in mine, if you haven't noticed in the Scribble Chaps videos, I'm always the one that adds the backgrounds and the environments.
Beautiful background.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, usually I only have a short period of time to add them. And I am going to walk you through the process of how I do it. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm starting with basic lines. Form lines. Something to give you an idea of the space you're in. And they don't say a lot by themselves. It's a couple squiggles. But once you add other elements, it starts to make sense. So some basic lines, and then along the back, depending on where you are, what you're doing, or what your perspective is, it's easy to add like a mountain or a tree line. This is pretty vague. This is mountains.
Right.
But it gives you an idea, like, okay, you've got a hill there in the background, you've got a hill in the foreground, and then you start to move to the elements in the very front. So you would think, maybe start in the very front, then go backwards, which is what I do from here on out.
Okay.
But to start, just to visualize the space, it helps to put the very most,
the horizon.
furthest thing. So I'm going to add a little bush here.
Oh, a little bush.
I don't really know how to draw a bush, but put some berries on it.
No, it looks like a great bush. I immediately saw it.
Thank you. I'm glad. So the closest elements come up, and like this bush obviously will look huge, but if you kind of understand perspective, or if you don't, as I draw, you'll start to see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The bush will look like it belongs where it is. This is going to be a little bit of a pond, and then I'll put some of those cattails. Is that a local term, or is that like that global?
It is. It's a colloquialism, but heck if I know what they're actually called.
I think people will get it once they see what you're doing, to be honest.
And because, again, these are quick backgrounds, I'm just doing quick lines.
Right.
These are just super vague, like kind of get the idea of where your shape's going to be, and you fill it in from there. So you're going to start with as little detail as possible, especially if you are being timed, because, if someone says time, I want people to have an idea what it kind of is.
Right.
So the forms that I put along the top are pretty vague. You see here how it's, just sort of lines to define the form, like I was saying.
Yeah.
The shapes on the top don't have to be totally complete, and then here I'm just going to start filling it out a little bit more. Sorry.
I really like the perspective you pulled with that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's sort of the line gets, as you can see, to go along with what I was saying, you can see they start behind the bush and get a little bit. As they go back, they get shorter. So what I was just drawing there, the shapes on the top, because they're very vague, like if you've ever watched a cartoon and it's been in a sports stadium, you see the drawings in the back are usually little dots of color.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I'm just doing little alternating lines to give some variance in the shape so it doesn't look like a carbon copy of the same thing.
Yeah, right.
It does look different and varied. Some different heights in grass, just again to sort of establish what we're looking at and bring it to life a little bit more. So I'm just going to finish this up a little bit, and then I'll jump into the next thing. What I like to do after you get the closest stuff drawn is like the tallest objects that are still in that medium range distance. Tall things before short things. Because usually if you want to add in like a tree, it doesn't. It's weird to me to draw an object and then try to like place a tree behind it. Yeah. It's really weird because trees are one of those things that, I mean, they're not super easy to draw and make look good. Like you kind of have to know how to do it.
Right.
And excuse me while I don't know how to draw flowers.
Oh God. You ain't both, dude. And I think I like what you do with it too, because when I draw like natural backgrounds, I mean, if I ever end up doing it in my art world, but like when I'm doing it for like comic books and stuff, it tends to be like that sporadic kind of line usage where it's not just like.
Well, you see how I'm sort of dabbling them in. And
Right.
it's more so to fill the space than anything.
Well, I mean that's a
But
good idea.
yeah, you see the shapes. It's variance in line height. So it's like a squiggle. It doesn't have to be 5 lines all the same length as your grass. Like it's an organic shape, so it's got to be a little fluid, different heights, different sizes. and I'm going to end up putting my tree behind that. You gotta hint at the form. Hint at the form of what you're drawing is the easiest way to do a quick background. Like you saw how I did on the cattails, just an idea of where the edge of the shape is. Because those cattails on their own, especially the ones on the right, those look like garbage. But you get what it is when you're looking at this. So that's the point. Art, I don't know what the quote is exactly, but being an artist, it's not about drawing something the way it is, but drawing something that will make people believe
it's
they're
about the
looking
illusion.
at it. Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
You've communicated what you want to communicate properly, and that's the point.
So these trees, I'm just sort of erasing the background line. Trees are a weird thing, and there's a million different ways to do them. I do them with a lot of small, fast lines. And I'm just sort of going to hit this and give it, again, like I was saying, a vague shape. Maybe I'll kind of come back for details later. But again, more squiggly lines, dashes, and whatever.
Right.
Just because it's leaves, and leaves are a hard thing to draw. We've all seen those cloud trees that look nothing like a tree.
The trees I make, yeah.
And the ones I make.
And like that's like an oak, a thick, luscious oak.
Right.
But when you have a little like dainty, you know those little tiny trees that are always outside, like
house
schools,
Right. Or
What's this indication?
So the height of this tree.
yes.
I'm going to measure the height of this bush, which it's a little bit shorter, but I'll draw this line here back again on the tree, and then what I'm going to do, if I can find my selection tool, there it is drag this arrow, and I'm going to show you something about perspective. Whoa. Look at how similar those are. And if I had made it the full height of that bush, they'd be the same height. So that tree and that bush, almost the same size.
Right.
Huh.
But that's perspective. It's a little bit further back. You see these things, and you don't think that tree's as big as that bush.
Right.
You can tell what's happening, but it's a trick. It's a little trick of the trade.
Trick of the mind.
That's our word of the day. If you caught the word trick, be sure to write it in the comments.
And we'll send you
Nothing.
high fives.
Okay.
High fives.
So then, where
I
I like to go from there, put some clouds in, right?
Yeah,
I pretty
very
much
bad.
have all the elements in the foreground I want, and from here you can kind of do wherever.
So right now you're just sort of like filling out space.
Right. Some little jet stream lines in there. Again, a part of establishing the environment is creating the full size of the space. So we did the back, we did the front, we kind of put some mid-range in there, but now we're just like in an open space. So we have to be somewhere.
Right.
And that somewhere is on Earth, and that somewhere has clouds. So I'm putting the clouds up.
Okay.
And you can sort of do things to make it interesting. Like right here, again, like what as I've been saying this whole time. Are you tired of hearing it yet?
No.
Vague lines. That establish the form. So like this could be like a storm front moving in over the cloud or over the mountains. It could be some fog coming in. And ordinarily you could put, if you were to fully shade and color this, it would be a little bit darker around the edge of the front cloud.
Right.
Right.
So the back one, just because clouds are three-dimensional, and they do make up space, so the one in the front might have different lighting than the one in the back. You could even play with it to the point where the front one was dark and the things in the back were light. And I'm not going to get into that. That'll be a whole other episode inside the mind.
Right.
And that whole back area would be shaded as well. But this is just a simple line drawing. This is quick. So that's how it's going to be. And then the sun, if I can figure out how to make a sun.
Behind the cloud this time.
Yeah.
Behind the
cloud.
Not in front of it. Let's just put it somewhere else. I don't like that cloud. Okay, that's not right. Alright. Perfect. A little bit lopsided, but we're going to deal with it.
Well, see the
So, don't draw your suns like this. Don't do that.
Oh yeah.
The suns don't have a jagged line. Go ahead, look right at the sun. You won't see anything for a couple minutes. But they don't have those jagged lines. Okay, so this would be a good settled background. You could leave it as it is.
Right.
But I'm going to use a couple more minutes to flesh out some details.
Right, of course.
These are some curves in the lake, which I clearly don't understand how. It's difficult to work digital sometimes.
I know. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, just some little. Do you know what those are called?
Ripples?
Ripples?
Ripple. Why couldn't I think of that word?
Uh,
Ripples.
It's a hard word.
Right. And as you get a few more things in there, I mean, you could put a duck in the pond if you want.
I want to. Are you gonna put a duck in the
No,
pond?
I'm not going to put a duck in the pond.
All right.
But I will add some more, like some. I don't know. What do I want to do? Flesh out this tree a little bit more. Maybe make this because this tree's looking kind of sad. Give it a little.
You need to get a happy tree.
Yeah, a little owl hole. some more leaves.
Yeah, so like a detail doesn't have to be there. The whole idea is that you're going to have, like you said, the form of everything.
Right, like
You
you
don't want-
understood what this environment was
Right.
before these details.
Right.
Right.
I don't need leaves on the bush to understand it's going to be a bush.
Right, right. Nor will I put leaves on the bush.
Right.
Maybe I will just a little bit. Okay. Because I have to. Alright.
That's a flower, though, isn't it?
They're berries.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so, yes. Berries are like a flower, right?
Yeah.
Is that?
Technically. No, I actually don't know.
I'm
I'm
not
not a herbologist.
Technically they're
Lots.
ovaries, but don't worry about it. Anyway.
Gross. And then here, you know how like grass blows through the, or wind blows through the
Yeah.
grass on the mountains?
That's actually something I have trouble capturing, and watching you do it right there really just sort of gave me an idea of how to
Yeah.
pull it off.
Simple, varied lines. And if you're working with color, there's different ways you'd show everything.
Right.
But here back here,
perspective.
this is going to give, some true indication of how deep this environment is. You see the mountains, you saw that hill. This is a farm. So these are some like farms, so you can tell this now. This is way off in the distance.
Right.
Just kind of to establish how far off everything is. So the perspective really does sink pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And farms are nice. I'm sure you've all been on an airplane and flown over a farm. How
Yeah, of course.
the crops go in different directions. I don't know why they do that.
I have a lot of family members who own farms.
Really?
I did not know that. Little farmhouse.
Little
Probably
farmhouse on the
Little
ferry.
bit.
Actually,
too big, but that's okay.
I like it.
I don't know.
I
Mine's
can
are pretty big.
see it.
Silos.
You can definitely tell
Look at
it's
that.
there.
Wouldn't you want to live on that farm?
Is it that small? In real life?
What?
The farm?
Oh, if you could hold it in the palm of your hand?
Yeah.
No.
Would you want
It's
to live
perspective.
That's
It's a trick.
in that?
background.
And they got you!
Oh my gosh! It's
And
a trap.
like this could be, you could even add some more background environment into it, like a forest, if you want to put like the edge of a forest.
Right.
I don't really know how to start doing that, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Is this a...
Lines. You can define shape with lines. Remember that. If there's one thing you take away from this, you define the shape with some lines.
That was the hardest thing for me in college, was like, because everyone was like, add texture. But all texture really meant was like brush stroke or like just lines.
Right, just
more lines.
weird application of lines that don't look like lines.
Right.
So they sort of just, again, to establish difference, this is something on shading that'll probably be its own episode. But as shapes, like I said with the clouds, are up against other shapes, where they meet at the edge, you want it to be the darkest point, because it really, it helps separate. You see this forest is clearly different from the hill, from the mountain.
Right. Absolutely.
It's very much like it's like starting a new environment. It helps with contrast. There are a lot of artists who do a lot of their work, even like comic artists, usually with blackout style, where characters look just as much black ink as there is white space.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they incorporate the shadows into the lines.
Yeah.
So it's to establish contrast and shape. So you see here I put little jaggies, which you can hardly even tell
Right.
because it's so small, but it's so far away. I
Right.
mean, you're not going to have like 5 trees here that are like giant trees.
Right.
But you might have a couple, and it's jaggy. And then again, the mountains to create some of that difference in tone, different in
Right.
shade, color.
Well, it's kind of like you're trying to use atmospheric perspective at this point, where it's like off in the distance, it's kind of faded,
Right.
but you're using like contour lines instead of actually like making it transparent.
Right. And then you do the same. You'd like shade behind that hill to show what's behind it is darker or less saturated with color, or whatever the case. And I'm awful at color. So when you take these principles and switch them to color, it all changes. It's not
really
like
does.
working the same at all.
You know what though? As someone who I would say is pretty okay with color, like a lot of these actually do still apply, kind of.
It's the execution more so,
Yeah.
where
Right.
it's like the principle's the same, but trying to
No,
do
you're
that
right.
in color.
Yeah, but the execution.
I can't do it. I don't. No, I don't know why. That's why I never wanted to go full artist.
It's tough. I mean, my couple years working with paint and like color, it was always really hard to figure out how to define shapes. That's why I do a lot of mixed mediums. I mean, that's why I include Sharpie in a lot of my paintings. Because
Right.
it's like just easier for me to define things.
You're a contour kind of guy.
I love them. I have been since the days of my youth.
So what you want to have, the shading. So you see how I added this darker grass,
Yeah.
and this is going back to what I was saying earlier about that sort of like blackout drawing style. And this is a crappy face. But like ordinary shading would look like that. You wouldn't be doing that. You put like heavy black that defines the edge of the shape. Right. And this would be like if there was like a flashlight under their face, maybe or something. I don't know what I'm doing because this face is
dynamic shadow.
But it puts that. Yeah, I don't need to say anything else.
It's a dynamic.
Yep.
I like it.
But yeah, it just defines the form, and then maybe he looks like he's wearing a mask, like he's a superhero. But Hitler stash. I don't know. Forget this.
I think it proved your point, though.
Yeah. So a few darker lines now is all I'm adding, just to detail this. So like in an ordinary episode of Scribble Chaps with 3 men and 1 pen, when I have a minute, like I would bust out the first 3 steps I showed you, just some lines, and that's it. That's the end of it. If I had more time, this is what you would see. And I think this is looking pretty nice. So
it's very nice. I want to live there. I'm not gonna lie.
I want to live in that tree.
And then I'm putting just those blades of grass that just give them a little bit of volume. There's not a whole lot. And then the other thing, the last thing that I have to touch on, if you're going to add any sort of color, just a basic tip for anyone getting into digital art, or advanced shading or whatever, new layer.
Yeah.
New layer, always.
Well, always keep your lines separate.
Collin's the worst.
See, I don't like multiple layers. I love...
Well, you see how easy it is. If it's in front of it, you can see it and focus on it.
Right.
Drag it behind, it's behind your lines wherever you are. And it's not like if you're going to draw on the same layer, you're just you're playing a game of dodge the black lines.
Yeah. Right, it really is. New layers are the cheat sheet for artists.
Yeah.
And that's the main feature. That and the ability to undo make digital art awesome. So that's all I have.
I
was going to say that's the end, then you started singing that. But that's pretty much it for the simple backgrounds inside the mind of Mac, episode 1.
Thank you. You taught me a lot, Mac. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Not a problem. And for some reason, that orange on the top looks super dark.
It looks really good, though.
You see what I'm talking about? Like dark, and then it looks like
I think that's your monitor, because my monitor does that too, kind of. And like when you stretch it, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be right.
Monitors, folks. Another problem with digital art.
This is my good monitor.
Thanks, guys, for watching.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, I'm a scribble chap now. Give me a kiss, my wife. Baby, my butt's on fire. If you refuse me, I think you'll lose me. Something is something now. Telephone and I'm wrong.